Um, I want to welcome author MK Dockery to the YouTubes. I feel weird calling this a podcast because when I think about podcast, I have a very specific idea of what that means. And of course, the word podcast has come to mean any number of things over the years. So I'm still evolving what I'm calling this thing that we're doing. Um, but welcome to my space on the internet.
Thank you, Scott.
How are you doing?
Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm tired, like I told you, but that's because I have chronic issues with sleep.
I feel you. So just to give a little background to our watchers slash listeners, MK and I got to know each other through TikTok. We were part of the TikTok writers group. Um, and we just, got to know each other through that and through our various TikTok videos. And she's one of the authors on there that I came to respect deeply, her opinion and her abilities as a creator. So I was eager to have her on the show. And we're going to talk today about writing and writers' spaces and community, because I think community is a big part of what I miss um, about writing. I think it's harder to find for some reason now than it was when I first started my writing journey 17 years ago. And I don't know if that's just because there are more of us in the independent writer community. Um, and we lose sight of the importance of that um, in the desire to, put ourselves out there. Um, but um, but before we do that, before we get into that, tell me a little bit about your writing journey. How long have you been a writer? What got you started?
So my cousin Jim, he was like an uncle to me. He's passed on. James H. Cobb, internationally famous best-selling author, was foundational to me growing up. Um, so I'd go over to him and he it's kind of sad. He never married. He was introverted, but very brilliant man. Um, and so when I'd go stay with my great aunt, which was his mother, he would often take me to occupy me. And I was a latent reader. I was a special education student, ADHD on the spectrum with autism. And my parents would often say, man, if only we can get her to read, if only we can get her to read. And my cousin was always just like the eternal optimist. And he's like, don't even worry about it. When she finds that story that sparks everything, she's going to be fine. Just chill, chill. And so he would take me to Barnes and Nobles and he'd be like, okay, Mally, go have fun. And I'd come back and I'd have like two books and I'd be like, okay, I'm good. And he's like, you weren't here long enough. Go back. And I'm like, okay. And I'd come back and I'd have two more. I'd be like, okay. And he's like, you're not done. And I'd be like I'm looking at the stack and I'm like, this is like more than I get in a year from my parents. And he'd be like, no, go back. And it would like, I'd have to leave with my height in books before he was satisfied. And he'd be sitting there at the cafe because we were at a Barnes and Nobles, and Barnes and Nobles often had like, Starbucks or a cafe type thing there. And he'd be sitting there on his laptop writing because he was always writing the next book. And I'd leave with a pile of books, and that's how I got all of my classics. That's how I've got all of my like this guy. He bought all my romance novels, my first romance novels. And didn't bat an eye. Didn't even question what I was doing. He's like, "All right, let's go."
Nice.
He bought me thousands of dollars worth of books every time I came over. And that's how I built my library. And he left me his library.
Well,
So, um, my love of books, I'm gonna cry, was fostered by Jim. Um, and then he was my biggest cheerleader when I started writing. And when I moved up north, because I didn't live terribly far away from him, but I actually moved closer about 18 years ago. He knew I wrote. He knew I wrote through high school, and he was like, "Come join my writers group." And they met in Fife, kind of north of Tacoma, and they met once a month. Him and a group of authors that I didn't maintain connections with, but that was my first interaction with other serious writers other than Jim, and how writers group worked and how we traded chapters, and gave critique. And it was just a very, very different situation. And this was my first functional writers group. And it had issues, but Jim wasn't the issue.
mhm, mhm,
It You mentioned about writers groups and how things, you know, feel so much better when you have a good writers group. That's a gem when you do have one that's good, because so often I've been a part of so many writers groups for short periods, long periods. Some start so good and they stay so good for so long, then they're not good anymore. They got maybe too big for their britches. They brought somebody in that kind of threw the whole system off. Um, Egos can run the space. All sorts of various things can happen. Health issues can impact the functions and function of the group. And you can just lose a space that you counted on
mhm.
so quickly, you know? And so, going back to your question, how long have I been writing? Um, I wrote my first book when I was in third grade. It wasn't very serious. It was called Dr. Scuba by Mallory Cobb, because that was my name back then. And my sister was the illustrator. She did a beautiful job.
Of course.
And then I was writing again in middle school. And then I was writing again in middle school. I actually was writing a book at the time. It was a portal fantasy, very similar to Outlander, only I'd never read Outlander,
Mhm.
and I never finished it. Thank God, because if I had ever went to go publish it and then found out that story was already written, it would have destroyed me.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
So that
that's awesome. Hey baby. I My writing journey started a lot later, but I was always into role playing, and I didn't come to view that as its own form of storytelling until college, when White Wolf came along and smacked us in the face with the fact that this is storytelling. You know, um, this is just another way of telling stories, and you know, you get that question on social media periodically, like, if you could go back and tell yourself, like, one sentence, what would you tell yourself? And I would always tell myself, start writing earlier, write that stuff down. Um, because I wrote a few, like, I don't even want to, now I would call them flash fiction. I wrote some flash fiction in high school, but it only a few things, and I never took it very seriously. And in college, again, all my creative juices flowed into the role playing games that I played, because I had a very active tabletop role playing game group, and we built these amazing expansive universes with, really detailed characters. And um, I think that combined with my love of certain authors like Stephen King, who just do characters so well, is what gave me a love for building characters. That's my favorite part of writing a story is making these characters and bringing them to life. But on topic of community, that group of people that I hung out with um, in college, and that couple of guys that I hung out with in high school, and we were role playing together, that energy where you just feed each other, it's like really good improvisation, where you're just hitting. Um, that is something that I miss um, these days. And I say these days because when I first started really writing, actually writing these stories down and not even trying to get them published yet, there was I was fortunate to be a part of a group of people that were feeding each other, helping each other in constant communication. We didn't think of it as a writers group. It was nothing so formal, but you know, um, there was just this sense of community and feedback and affirmation that um, I lost for a while. And
Yeah.
I think it's important for not all writers, certainly, but I think it's important for, I think, a lot of writers should have that sense of community and should
So
find
what you're talking about for me, I found in a different way. Um, and I call them ego kibbles, the validation, just little niblets, to get you through this very dry, desert plane of existence as you're trying to figure out how to tell a story. Because even though I've been writing for so long, I felt like I had been trying to write for so long, and characters did not come naturally to me. Um, Depth in a story, I was often writing, doing discovery writing, pantsing. I didn't know, and I still will discovery write and pants. And then as I get to know a character, I'm like, oh, who are you? And then I'll start to go back. Like I'm a mixed writer now, but I got into fan fiction. And you were talking about, I wish I would have taken writing more seriously. I think I took writing too seriously in the very beginning, that I discounted doing a bunch of things that actually shaped my craft far more than being serious
Mhm.
in the first place. So I ended up going and playing in fan fiction. And I actually started writing fan fiction, I want to say in 2002 or 2003, and it was Harry Potter fan fiction. It was terrible. And then I forgot my username. I don't know how to get onto fanfic.net. I don't remember the title of the work, and I don't remember the author pen name that I used. Is it's still out there somewhere. I can't even find it. Don't know. I don't know what happened. And I don't even know how to log into the AO3 email that I had for it. I don't know. So I have work out there published that I've lost. I don't know what happened to it. But then I watched the TV series Firefly. Have you watched Firefly?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. We've got a Firefly uh person. Okay. Then I went to BDM. Can I swear here?
oh yes.
Okay. So the BDM was called the Big Damn Movie. Serenity when that came out. So I was totally crazy about it. But I had a lot of people think I'm crazy, but I was like, no, Mal can't be with Anara. She's dying. Mal can't be with Kaylee. It's the brother sister relationship.
Mhm.
And Mal can't be with, his co-pilot, his second person. She's mourning. He's going to be with River because they're both very, very broken, but in time, So I started writing fix it, fix. Like they're not going to be together right now. That's a very sick situation. It's going to be down the line. And so I started writing constantly in the Firefly universe. And that's when I got addicted to fan fiction. And then I got my big break in The Walking Dead because they killed Beth. And that was a moment where I'm like, how could you kill a character right when she was coming into her own, when she had her own autonomy, when she was no longer this placeholder character? Like, how could you do that to me? And Daryl was actually evolving too.
Mhm.
And so I just started doing my own spinoffs. And that's when I started actually being known. Like, people started to know who I was.
Interesting.
And so I started writing in the Walking, yeah, I started writing in the Walking Dead fan fiction for about 4 years. And I started winning awards that I didn't even know I won. So like when I'd Google my name, I'd find out that I won like 2 awards like 2 years before. Nobody told me. I didn't know I got a Moonshine Award. I didn't know that, would have been nice to know. Um, and then I got into Spartacus. Like I loved Spartacus. And I wrote Gannicus fan fiction. And then Raylo. I loved this Raylo dynamic. And I hated how they finished off the series of Star Wars, not just from a romantic plot point, but I just hate from the Snoke scene
Mhm.
to the end of the series. I was just like, throw it away, throw the whole storyline away. You suck. Um, and then there was a TV series called Sanditon. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Sanditon.
No, huh?
Okay. So Sanditon is based upon a book called The Three Brothers that never got published. And The Three Brothers was the book Jane Austen was writing when she died.
Okay.
So it's an amazing story about a town and two brothers. Well, it's supposed to be it's about three brothers, but it's mostly about two brothers. And how one brother is just terrible with money and the other brother is terrible with emotions and the other brother is terrible with exercise. And it's very funny. And it ends as a TV series as a tragedy. And it was at the point of lockdown. We were about to go into lockdown. I had just finished watching the last episode of Sanditon. And no show has ever driven me to drink, but I went out that night with friends and I just ranted with them about this show, got totally shit faced drunk. And I don't get shit faced drunk. And I come home in a cab, fall down the stairs, crawl up the stairs in my front door, lock the front door, crawl to my couch, and I start writing the first 7 chapters of what became The River and the Man. This became the most popular fan fiction I ever wrote.
Awesome.
It became famous. And a lot of people don't like Sanditon is such a niche group, but like, holy cow, those people were such a strong, strong fandom. And so I wrote The River and the Man within 6 months. It was huge. Like I have like 200,000 readers on AO3 and like 200,000 on Wattpad or
Wow.
more. I haven't checked. I haven't checked. But then I wrote that same year, it was months later, but that same year. So we went into lockdown in like March, right?
Mhm.
So I started writing that in February. We weren't yet in lockdown. We were still able to go out to bars and whatnot. It was right before lockdown. Right when that was over, so we're in November, I did NaNoWriMo. I didn't really intend to do NaNoWriMo, but I did NaNoWriMo. And I wrote Choked Elopement. And this was the first time where my stories gained a hashtag on Twitter. And so Choked Elopement, hold on one second. I'm gonna have to go off screen for a minute.
Yep.
Choked Elopement got very popular too because it was a fan fiction of Sanditon again. It was another ending reimagined. I repackaged it for Kindle Vella and it became this, Pointless Elopement. And then Kindle Vella ended, and that one was my most popular story ever written still. I made more money off of this on Kindle Vella than I've ever made writing, period. And I have not published this. This is the rewritten, re-edited duology of the same story, but it's got a new name and it's called Vows Before Ruin. And it's the first book.
Okay.
So that's not out yet because I don't feel good about publishing in this climate today, but
I hear you.
that's ready to go. That's ready to go. And then the second book is called The Burden of Bliss. So,
Well,
because happily ever after doesn't always have a happily ever after.
true. I do want to say, for in regards to fanfic, like, and taking things seriously, like, I I would never in 1,000 years say that fanfic isn't something to take seriously. Like, anybody out there writing fanfic, like, go for it. I am happy with you, like, expressing your
Well,
creativity.
if you can master somebody else's characters reliably, you can master your own.
Yes.
But it takes a while for that muscle to switch to your own characters, but it's still there. You've worked that muscle. Now it's the application. Like, you do push-ups. Well, now do bar curls. You're
Mhm.
going to be able to do it. It's just it might be awkward for a while. Um,
I
but
mean,
that's fan fiction is where I learned characterization and how to develop a deep character and carry a story. Because I absolutely wrote, like, one of my Walking Dead fan fictions. I had some readers going, I don't know why I'm tuning into this story every single day. It's going nowhere, but these characters are awesome. But that's where I was in that writing process, was I could write characters, I couldn't write story,
mhm.
you know? And that's one thing that I love about like, I've left everything on my fan fiction and my archive of our own, like a time capsule. I don't edit, I drop it hot because it's my own, like, lab of being able to see my writer process through time. I have 2 decades of my writer process there,
Mhm.
you know? Not many people, like, even writers who write their originals, some people don't keep their first drafts. So they can't really see their own evolution in the roughest form. They hand it off to an editor and they think, "Oh my god, I'm awesome." No. No, somebody just polished that for you,
Yes. I'm a
you
I'm a big
know?
I'm a big believer in keeping early drafts of stuff so I can see how things grow um, from that initial idea into that finished form. And I love going back and reading my old stuff just to see where I've come from and where I've gotten to. Um, it's
Well,
a
it's interesting though, because we were in writers group together. So we often got to see, I mean, of course, we tried to edit and do, like, not throw misspellings and miseditings. We were focused on craft,
Mhm.
not necessarily punctuation and grammar. But I know that people in our writers group, I wasn't seeing a bunch of grammar mistakes, unless we were getting like somebody new that didn't know our system.
Mhm.
But like, I remember your work. It was often very polished already. So you've evolved to where you already have very clean work in the first place. So it's about, are you setting the tone right? Are your characters in character? Is the pacing right? So like you're actually in craft mode, not, you know,
Not in the nuts and
the
bolts.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing about writers group, like about writers groups in general, like especially if you're able to stick with one for a while, they can kind of see where you're at and kind of address the issues that you may be struggling with the most, where you need particular help, Um, I was part of a writers group, the only like in person writers group that I've been part of. We disintegrated a couple of months ago, and we're in the process of kind of reforming a new group. But the nice thing with that group was there were four of us, and we were kind of all in different places, and so we all needed slightly different things. And I think that worked well because um, we were able to, it wasn't one size fits all, we were able to like give each other help where we needed it. And we built, and even though the four of us are no longer going to be in the same group, um, we're still in community, and we're still in contact, and we're still helping each other. Um, and the thing about whether it's your fan fiction community or your writers group, um, being able to get, whether it's little nuggets of encouragement or nuts and bolts help, or whatever you need. I think there's such a there's such a need, I think, for that, and that too many writers um, are, are are going it alone, whether it's because they haven't found a community yet, or
Well,
they're
I think it's desperately hard to build a community for worlds you create, to have people get invested in worlds that you create because it takes time. One reason why I'm still in fandom, like right now, I'm still in Dramini. I'm still writing Dramini fan fiction, and I'm getting, I wouldn't say very popular, but I'm getting popular. I have Malfiction Audio, Spotify, where I'm reading my fan fiction, and that's gaining real traction. Um, but those are already established investments. Like people are already very invested, and getting hundreds of readers invested in just like two chapters, it's easy. But telling people, hey, I wrote a dang good book called Wingless, trying to get hundreds of readers just invested into trying to read that, impossible. Nobody cares that Dathka Jen was inspired by Kylo Ren. Nobody cares that Renna was inspired by Rey, you know? And I know that a lot of people are giving a lot of flack to Alchemized because it rode the coattails of fandom, but there's a marketing reason why it did.
yeah.
Because Alchemized could not get the following, not because it's not good. It's objectively, by my opinion, the best book of this century. And it's not just romance, but it would not have the following without mentioning, hey, Hermione, Draco Hermione. But it wasn't normalized when I published Wingless to be like, Raylo. Raylo, Ray, Raylo, you know,
Yep.
this is an AU Raylo.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's why when I, and people have mixed feelings about this, but when I am at, an event or I'm, marketing my books online, I have pop culture plugins. I'm like, this is, my Escher St. Clair book is John Shaft plus Sherlock Holmes plus Harry Dresden. You know,
But isn't that interesting that when we go query, because I have been on the query track and we, send our queries to agents, we are supposed to do comps.
hmm
We're supposed to. And
Yep.
part of the reason why we're doing comps is because we don't want to have them already repping. Like a lot of people, not only do we want to get a comp that they're interested in repping, but we also don't want to have divided allegiances with that agent going, I'm already like representing something too similar.
Yeah.
Because then there's this, like, who do I promote on these two books? Like, I can't go to a publishing editor, with Penguin or Random and be like, I have these two books. That's not how agents work. They have to choose which one has the strongest chance.
hmm
And
hmm
so when we query, we have to give those comps. So why is it so problematic that we use those comps when marketing? Because they're used when marketing to editors. Make it make sense.
I think the only objection that I've heard that makes sense is it sets up possible expectations that aren't met. Like, and I think that sometimes readers think too hard about the comparisons. Like, I'm talking when I make comparisons, um, I'm talking mostly about surface level stuff. Like, you know, no, Esho St. Clair doesn't have a heroin addiction like Sherlock Holmes did. That's
Mm,
that's that's going a couple of levels too deep. He's a consulting detective, like Sherlock Holmes was. Harry Dresden, he's a detective that uses magic. John Shaft, he's a powerful black man. Um, you know, uh, I want hooks so that I can kind of what to expect, and I can pique your interest if you're a fan of these kinds of things with some of these tropes, then you might be interested in what I'm doing here with this book. You know, um, I've never written any fan fiction, um, but I've written my share of pastiches. I'm not shy about my influences. Um, I'm not shy about the fact that if you read some of my fiction, it's going to be very reminiscent of Stephen King. If you read some of my stuff, it's going to be very reminiscent of Star Trek or you know, Firefly. Because I'm a geek and this stuff is in my bloodstream. Um,
love it.
so, you know, um, it's not in some cases it's not even a pastiche necessarily or anything, but there's going to be themes, there's going to be tropes that they just have in common because it's a genre expectation, you know. So you've got to clue your potential audience in on this is this is what we this is what you can expect.
Well, they
um,
have to have a reason to invest. And that's one thing I know that when I first came to Book Talk, it was back in 20, I was on TikTok in 2019 and 2020, but I wasn't on Book Talk until 20, 2021. And I encountered the argument of tropes are killing literary fiction. And why are the same formulaic plots being put out? I'm reading the same story over and over again. And I couldn't help but go back to my very early days of writing. God bless Jim. and him buying every single one of my Hannah Howell books, which was a formulaic romance plot line. Highlander romance, kidnapped bride, oftentimes, you know, like every single plot line was like a regurgitation of the book right before it. But I loved it. I was here for it. It was like my comfort read.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do that all the time. Like I read everything from Machiavelli to Milking Farm. Have you heard about Milking Farm?
It sounds familiar.
It's now the top book right now. But I'm reading it. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but like worlds apart, you know. I will read just about everything. Not necessarily for pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
for information.
Sure.
Um, but I do have my comfort reads. I have certain things that I'm drawn to, and tropes and genres and these formulaic plot lines, they are there for a reason. And I remember one of the first arguments and frustrated posts that I made on Book Talk was when I got frustrated at people saying this is plagiarism, you are stealing because a plot line had similar beat points, and I'm like, no, these are similar tropes, this is genre fiction, this this is derivative plot lines, this is a thing. And
100%.
people didn't understand that people aren't not buying that book because that book is similar. They're buying both because that's what they like. They're
Mm-hmm.
buying 50. They're buying hundreds of these books because that's what they like.
Yep.
This isn't a competition. Everybody's profiting.
It's a buffet.
It's a buffet. I love that. Yes. And I don't feel tropes are ruining the book world. It might be ruining classical and highfalutin literary fiction, but if you truly love books, you're also eating from that table too.
Yes. Like I,
And
and I mean even classic literature. I mean the tropes that we embrace in genre fiction exist in classic literature.
they're there too. Exactly. I mean, like the Gothic fiction of the Brontes, and it's echoed in a lot of the fiction today. It's all there.
I
It's
mean
a lineage.
I think it's hilarious because like I mean I went to college to become an English teacher, a high school English teacher. I never did teach other than student teaching,
Thank
but
God, it would have ruined you.
but like all of this fiction that we, like Dickens and um the Bronte sisters and you name it, like they were pop culture for their time period. They
Yeah, well, and because they were accessible, like especially Dickinson, the Pickwick Papers, it
Mhm,
was serialized fiction. And I remember that was another controversy in the last 10 years was serialized fiction,
mhm.
and how that's ruining the book world too. And it's like, no, it isn't. It's accessibility. Although I have an issue with things like Novel Cat and Good Novel making like when you have to pay $80 for a whole book that continues to go on and on for 1,000 chapters or more. Yeah, we're gaming the system. There's a
I'm
problem here.
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, it's happened. I've gotten involved with, because I've done serialized fiction under different pen names, and I've gotten invested in stories where I'm like, okay, I'm 150 pages in. I've spent $60 on this story. I try to jump ahead and I realize this story has 800 chapters. Okay, I am done. I am so done. This is impossible. Like, and this was before Chat GPT, so I know that that person was just, you know,
Mhm.
and it reminded me also of fan fiction, which because you're getting it free, you must accept the lack of polish and editing. So when you've got sentences that are just a mess, you're still there for the story, you're still there for the plot, so it's got to be there. But when it's just a mess, and you're paying for it, no, this is ethically wrong,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And that's what I wouldn't say every story on Good Novel or Novel Cat or any of the other serialized fiction websites are doing. They've cracked down and they've changed that process a lot in the last, I want to say, 3 or 4 years. But like 4 years ago, it was not uncommon to see 500 and 800 chapter books that you'd
Wow.
pay through the nose to finish.
That's interesting. Like I got into Kindle Vella as an author right at as often happens with me, right about the time it went away. Like I literally started dropping chapters of a serial novella like um 5 months before they said, "Oh, we're pulling the plug." And I was like, "Well,
Oh, that's so sad. That's so sad because I routinely was making between 200 and $700 a month on Kindle Vella for nearly 2 years.
yeah." So, but that's like, I'm still releasing that on my Patreon, um, but yeah, I love serializing fiction. I love reading serialized fiction. So I'll have to check out the Novel Cat, you said?
That's
No?
not for you.
Okay.
That's romance.
Ah.
That's romance.
Well, no,
And
there's no saying I don't have a little romance in my soul. What I'm writing now is not romance.
are you writing shifters?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
But
No,
if there,
it's
if
very specific.
like so yeah, I'll have to find out if there's like an equivalent that's friendly to the genre that I'm writing in.
So there is one, man, I wrote it down. Something road. Something road. Gosh. Trevor. I don't know if you know who Trevor is. He's my friend and he writes on Silk Road. No,
No, that's the pirating
anyways.
site.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a serialized fiction site and they're pro like everything. You can put
Okay, well,
science fiction, fantasy, noir, all those things. I just haven't gotten on there and he raves about it.
we'll track it down and we'll post it in the comments for those
Yeah, I gotta
that are
find out
watching
what
it.
it is, but that's I've been hesitant because of all the serialized fiction sites that I've ever worked on. I made the most money on Kindle Vella and I miss it so much. And I really have some criticisms on Amazon because they treated it like a failed um platform,
Hmm.
but it only failed because they never made it go global. And the strongest groups that do serialized fiction are in Asia.
Mm.
And had they opened it globally and Asia gotten involved, it would have taken off. And I still don't understand how Amazon, which is a global market, didn't know this.
Well,
They had to know this, but like I don't know why they didn't do that.
yeah, I mean, well, considering the number of things that Amazon has mishandled, it's like not surprising they mishandled that. But
It was amazing though. Like of all the terrible things that Amazon is known for, they did a lot of things really great. With the normalization of self-published books and and all that stuff. But now they're gaming the system against self pubs. We can't like even get our names out there. We have to any marketing that we have on Amazon yields zero results, like zero. And the one good thing they did, Kindle Vella, they took it away.
So, what is your current favorite author space? Where's your current favorite platform?
That would be AO3, where I do fan fiction.
Hmm.
Uh, I've I haven't abandoned original works. I actually started last December another trilogy, and I wrote book 1 and 2 of a first draft. I wrote like 300,000 words in about 2 months period of time. It was an incredible um, burst of energy. I didn't get to the third book because I knew by book 2 I was like, okay, I this is beautiful, this is wonderful, but now I have to go back to book 1 and rewrite the beginning of everything because the order of events is wrong, and I have to get the order of events right to write book 3. Um, but then I just got back to being involved with Dramini, and that's where my comfort is. That's where my ego kibbles are. That's where I'm getting my validation. Um, I really should finish Featherless. Um, so Wingless was published in 2022, and Featherless's first draft was also finished in 2022. And that one required a full rewrite, and I have not bothered to go past chapter 2 of Featherless's rewrite. And part of that's because it just doesn't have the readership that would warrant me investing more time in it. And yes, I love this story, but book 1, I can understand on some levels that book 1 is not where the heart of the story is. The heart of the story is actually in book 2. So if readers are like not feeling it in book 1, but I could see many of them moving to book 2 because there's a lot of questions that they want answered in book 2. I still need the readership to pay for the editing. I still need that. So I just have not bothered. It's still a story that's very near and dear to my heart. Uh, when I was reading Manacled and now Alchemized, that's what it's been turned into. That book accomplishes what my less than series. That's what I call less than. Wingless, featherless, powerless. It's the less than series. It's a series about a war that lasts thousands of years. A lot of the same themes in Alchemized is supposed to be in that series. And now that I've read Alchemized, it's like, this is the most profound book that I've been trying to write. Like, this is it. And she did it. I don't need to do it now, you know?
Right.
So I don't, it's like, I don't even know where to go from here now. Um, it's
The
not that I don't it's not that I don't think I'm an amazing writer or whatnot. I do know I'm an amazing writer. It's just, what do I write now?
the impetus
um
to write that second book is not there because if people aren't reading the first book, why should you write the second book?
yeah, and I mean, I still would love to. The story of Dathka and how he became who he was is so important. And it's interesting, Alchemized is a story told out of order. So's Wingless. Wingless is a story that's told out of order because you don't know. I love that unreliable kind of narrative when you have these assumptions that are completely blown apart when you have context later.
Mm-hmm.
And then it forces you to go back and reread the previous. And so seeing that mirrored in Alchemized, I feel like this strange kinship to this writer going, you saw what I saw. You were doing what I was doing. And it's beautiful, but it's also kind of like frustrating because like, dang it. I should have been faster. I should have just done it all at once. And why couldn't I get, a bunch of readers invested in this? Why'd I give up? Like, I also gave up in
Mm.
marketing that book, partly because I got involved with a lot of the drama that was going on Book Talk, and the way the culture was going really depressed me, and I didn't know how to approach it. And I can now, like, I don't know if you've been on my page on TikTok, but um, I'm now engaging with the drama, but I'm also engaging in a way that I feel helps the situation instead of pours gas on it,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that I'm offering solutions as opposed to just making it worse,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And, we were a part of a group, a book talk group. And I was quiet oftentimes, especially when we went to the after hours. But like that same energy was coming into our group, and it like worried me. And I was it happened with Neil, things fell apart,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to foster a destructive space.
Mm-hmm.
I healthy literature spaces are very important to me, and protecting those spaces, but also like when you're dealing with a dynamic group the way it should be, it's important to be delicate, and there was a lot of indelicacies happening, and it wasn't my group to control.
Mm-hmm.
And Neil also kind of felt unable to control it himself. Like, we had conversations, and I know he cared so much about our writers group that we
Mm-hmm.
were doing,
100%.
and he has a lot of regrets, and I know he wants his writers group back, but at the same time I think he's afraid to try again, you know.
So, without delving into those details, how does one, if one wants to create a healthy writer's space, what are some things you should encourage?
So the way that I approached it was with Neil. I felt like I don't like to be the leader.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if I'd be a good leader, but I don't like to be the leader. I like to be kind of the support um, within the group, and to be kind of the eye of making sure everything's going good and going a good direction. But what I've seen happen, not just with that group, but every group that's gone downhill, is they'll expand and let too many people in.
They're keeping it
And
small.
it sounds exclusionary. And we don't want to exclude, but it's important to be selective on the energies you bring in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, um, because those can just tip the scales
Sure.
in the wrong directions. Um, Also, it's important to keep in mind your mission of your group, whatever that mission may be. Like you mentioned earlier, the group that you've been working with, like you've been focusing on certain tasks. Some people have strengths, other people have weaknesses, where who fits in where. And I think that when you're trying to build a group, it's okay to be like a little more casual and open in the beginning, but then become a little bit insular and selective. So one of the things that I personally had a problem with, and it wasn't like an opposition problem, but I don't think that writer spaces should always be conducted in public. I think
Mhm.
it is good occasionally to show people writing processes, but part of the comfort level and getting everything that you want to get from a writers group is feeling safe in that group
Right.
and the privacy. So like if you're online, maybe going into a private Discord or conducting it in a private space where you can say something that somebody's not going to crucify you over.
Hmm.
You can't, where you're not scared to write something that's offensive, like you have room to mess up.
Hmm.
And I've seen that in other groups where somebody wrote something and before you know it, like 50 people showed up in the room and canceled them.
Yeah, that is a unique aspect of the group that we were a part of. For those of you who don't know who are watching this video, the TikTok writers group that MK and I were a part of, we did it in a TikTok live setting where we would actually read our works in the live and critique each other in the live so that an audience would be able to watch. And that made things interesting. I agree. I think that generally speaking, yeah, I think the best way to handle a writers group is to have it be um, private for a number of reasons. Like we're not offering our best polished works, regardless of the kind of writers group it is.
Exactly. And I think we were getting a benefit of being very public about our writing, but I don't think it was translating to like the concept is people are hearing our capabilities and either learning from them or potentially buying from us. That wasn't happening. Nobody was buying from us. It was, just a take environment, which is great. Let's take this in private, so that we can protect each other, you
Hmm.
know. And I've seen, and this is not the group that we were in, but I've seen things really go in wrong directions.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that didn't actually happen in that group.
Hmm.
But if I were to do it again, it will not be in a public space ever again.
Right. And that makes sense. I think what what Neil was trying to do was unique and interesting.
And it was
And
beautiful, and it was
and
beautiful, and it worked for a very long time,
yeah,
actually.
yeah. And I loved it.
But then it got too big for its britches, I think.
Yeah. Um, so keeping it small, having a clear mission statement, vision statement, um, keeping it uh, private. Um, I think these are all good things
Yeah.
for a critique style group.
I feel like this is something that a lot of groups, especially online, you can get very caught up in the excitement of it all, right? But you need to trust the people that are critiquing you,
Yes.
you know? And I don't feel the way that we were doing things particularly fostered trust, but we just so happen to trust each other.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's great. We just so happen to.
and it helped that I think there was already some degree of relationship. Like some of us already knew each other from previous interactions on the platform, and so at least some of us did. Like I didn't know everybody that was part of the group prior to being part of the group, but at least I knew
I
Neil,
don't
knew you.
remember, but did I know you before writers
I
group?
think we had interacted some. I had definitely interacted with Neil. I had interacted with Wolf. Um, and so at least I had some connective tissue there. I didn't know really any of the rest of the group, but at least I knew and trusted Neil and his judgment. I knew Wolf and their talent. Um, I had seen some of your videos and I think interacted a little bit. It's hard to tell at the mists of time, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah. But I mean, even with like in person, traditional style critique groups, trust is probably going to have to be developed because you're probably not going to know uh, the majority of the other people that are going to be in that group, unless you're in a small town or something like that, um, or it forms out of some pre-existing kind of group. But trust has to be, developed and earned over time, um, and not
Yes,
and then not broken, you know. Um,
exactly.
so
It's so important, especially, I can't remember exactly the context where I said it, but when you're critiquing somebody and they're taking your information, you can't be mad if they don't use that information. It
mm,
could be that you did not foster trust. Like, you need to have that relationship where your input is respected. Otherwise
mhm.
it's just whatever, throw away.
Yeah, like I'm in the process now of where I went to a comic book convention with a publisher friend of mine, and there was another author there that he knew, and the three of us are talking about forming a writers group. I'm not sure how serious we are about that yet, because we just kind of floated the idea this past weekend, and one of the first questions I asked is how seriously are we going to take this? Because, if I say part of the majority of it is accountability. Like, are we writing this week? Have we written this week? And how seriously are we going to take this? Because if I say, Jason, have you written this week? You know, I'm going to have this expectation that if you say no, I'm going to say, well, you really need to write next week, and that you're going to take that as a charge to carve out some time and write next week. 'Cause if you ignore my accountability with you, then why are we even meeting? Why are we even having this discussion? Um, and if we actually move to the level of critiquing each other's work, if you don't respect my critique of your work, again, why are we even having this discussion? Um, so I know he respects me as a writer. I respect him as a writer. So I don't think we're going to have that issue. Um,
So you bring up something that you just triggered my thought process. I hope you don't mind me interrupting there.
no, no, go for it.
I remember when I was first starting writers group and I was getting this information, a lot of words that I didn't understand because I was so new to the whole writer process. And your prose is this way. Which narrative style are you using, etc. Uh, you need to do this and change this to here. And I just sit there going, okay, I hear you. I don't know how to apply your critiques.
Mm, hmm
It's not that I'm rejecting you. I don't even know how,
mm,
I think a lot of people who are more evolved, right? Like I'm one of those people that struggle. I have to sit down and actually plan my articulation. I can't real time articulate very, very well.
hmm
So when I go to tell somebody how to do something in real time, I'm going to fail every time. Um, and so if they don't know how to apply my critique, I can't really fault them. But
No.
also, if I end up using these words that are not in their toolbox yet and they don't know how to apply it, I can't really fault them for not being able to apply it either. So I think that there can also be a disconnect between, not that you have bad feedback, but that you have bad communication or even bad absorption of said feedback, and patience. This is another thing for writers group and feedback and critique. Patience is
Mhm.
necessary on both sides.
Yes. Well, that's why it's good to have a writers group that lasts over a length of time, and you can learn how to communicate with each other. You can learn where there might be areas of um, skill where another person may not know. Okay, what does point of view mean? What does this terminology mean? And or that they have a comfort level to come back and say, well, I'm not sure what that means. Can you clue me in? Um, and that's another level of trust. That I'm not going to laugh in your face if you tell me, oh, I'm not sure what that writerly term means. And then I'm not going to laugh at you and say, well, are you even really a writer? Um, or that, you develop the ability to communicate what like. A lot of times I'll read something and I'll be like, I know what the issue is here. Do I have the do I have the vocabulary to communicate what is wrong here? Um, so, you have to develop the vocabulary to communicate what the issue is. So, yeah, there's definitely uh, a learning curve, a variety of learning curves in developing a writer space like that, a critique group or an accountability group. Uh, but I think that can be a beautiful thing as long as, again, you trust each other, you respect each other, and you devote that time um, to building that community.
I also have cautions in building that community, and this is another thing I've been a part of, is there are going to be some people, some of these people are drawn to lead these groups, is they'll monopolize,
Mm,
and they will constantly promote their own work, whether or not it's published or not.
mm,
And the discussion will always revolve around their genius.
mhm,
These are not the groups to be a part of.
mm,
They will not grow you. It's not so much a bad thing to be said about that person, although we can say bad things about that person. It's about, what is the purpose of you being in that group? For
mhm,
growth. Your We need validation too. And
mhm.
you're not there to just be pure validation for this person that made the group for their own ego
Yes,
purely.
yes.
So watch out for those groups. They are more common than the good groups.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I can see somebody starting a group for their own purposes of increasing their ego, increasing their uh, following, and not for the purposes of building community and helping other people. Um,
I see. I feel like hosting a group like that is a major responsibility in
mhm,
the first place. That's why I've never been the one to instigate or start one. Neil's not the first person that I've encouraged to be the host of a group, because I feel they have the right stuff
humility,
for it. You
maturity.
know, yeah. Um, Neil is a special kind of person that I believe should host these types of things, because they have that checked ego.
Mhm.
They are constantly self-checking, and that's who needs to be the leader.
Yeah.
And um I hope more people who have that self-checking capability stand up and they do that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I want to, in the interest of respecting your time and respecting our audience's time, I want to wrap things up. I could talk about this for hours, for sure. Uh, but let's let people know where they can find you.
So if you Google me, I have a TikTok, I have a Beacons page, and pretty much that will list everywhere you can find me, be it Wattpad, AO3, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, like like I'm Googleable. It's kind of pathetic.
Not pathetic to be easily found, or to be chronically online. Uh, well, okay, it may be a little pathetic to be chronically online, in which case
My sons would say
I'm pathetic.
cringe, cringe.
I too am pathetic and chronically online. Well, thank you so much for joining me, MK.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Scott.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, and I miss you. So I hope you won't be a stranger anymore.
I won't. I won't.